Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I found an old remote control that is no longer being used. From the outside, it shows clear signs of wear after years of service. First, I want to check whether this remote still works. After a closer inspection, I confirm that the remote is no longer functional. However, instead of throwing it away, I decide to reuse some of its components for an interesting DIY project. First, I remove the outer plastic casing to gain access to the internal components. Once the housing is opened, I take out the circuit board. Rather than discarding it, I will use the board as the central connection point for the antenna structure. Next, I apply a small amount of soldering flux to the spring contact on the circuit board. After that, I use a piece of solder wire and a soldering iron to create a solder joint at that location. This will serve as the first connection point for the antenna components that will be added later in the project. Next, I will use two signal cables as the connection components for the antenna. First, I carefully strip a small section of the insulation from one end of the cable. Then, I remove the braided metal shielding surrounding the cable to expose the copper core located in the center. Next, I position the exposed copper core at the solder joint I previously created on the remote control spring contact. Using a soldering iron, I securely solder the wire in place to create a strong and reliable connection. Once the soldering is complete, I route the cable through the battery compartment of the remote control. This allows the cable to be neatly integrated into the body of the remote while making use of the existing enclosure. After that, I reassemble the remote control housing. At this stage, the cable is secured inside, and the remote control body begins to serve as the main frame of the antenna. Let me know where you are watching this video from. Don't forget to comment the country you are currently living in down below. I'm really curious to see which parts of the world my videos are being watched from. Because the cable is longer than necessary for this project, I trim it down to a more suitable length. Next, I strip a small section of insulation from the other end of the cable to prepare it for the connector. I then attach the cable to an F5 connector, which will allow the antenna to connect to a television or another signal receiving device. Once the connection is complete, I wrap electrical tape around the joint. This helps protect the connection, improve durability, and reduce the risk of damage during use. For the remaining signal cable, I follow the same process by removing the outer insulation to expose the copper core inside. Once the cable end is prepared, I attach it to another F5 connector. This will serve as one of the main connection points of the antenna system. Next, I wrap electrical tape around the connection. On the other end of the cable, I strip away a longer section of insulation to expose more of the copper wire. This exposed copper will later be used as the mounting section for the signal reflector dish. With the cable preparation complete, I move on to the central component of the system. Here, I have an old TV signal splitter, which I will repurpose as the central connection hub for the antenna. First, I connect the splitter to the cable attached to the remote control. This connection will allow signals received by the antenna to be routed through the system. Next, I connect the second cable to the remaining port of the splitter. Once both connectors are tightened securely, the main components become linked together and the basic structure of the antenna starts to take shape. Next, I carefully bend the cable upward to create a support arm for the signal reflector dish. Once the support arm is ready, I apply a layer of adhesive to the surface of a wooden base that I prepared earlier. Then I firmly attach the antenna frame to it. This wooden base will help keep the antenna stable during operation and testing. In the next step, I use a small old CD as the reflector dish for the antenna. Instead of throwing it away, the disc can be repurposed as a simple signal reflecting component for this DIY project. Next, I prepare the signal cable that will connect the antenna to the TV. I check all the connectors and make sure every connection is secure before moving on. After that, I connect the signal cable to the finished antenna. At this point, the entire system is fully assembled and ready for testing. Now it's time to take this homemade antenna for a real-world test and see how well it can receive television signals. First, I switch through several TV channels without connecting the antenna. As you can see, the TV only displays a no signal message. This confirms that the TV cannot pick up any channels in its current state. Next, I connect the DIY antenna I just built to the signal input on the back of the TV and begin the test. And here is the result. Almost immediately after connecting the antenna, the TV channels appear. The picture is clear, the signal is stable, and there are no noticeable interruptions or reception issues. Honestly, this result is even better than I expected from an antenna built using an old remote control, a few signal cables, and several recycled components. To make sure the results are accurate, I perform one more test. I disconnect the antenna and observe what happens. As soon as the antenna is removed, the TV instantly returns to the no signal screen. All channels disappear completely. This confirms that the signal was genuinely being received through the homemade antenna rather than from any existing source. Now I reconnect the antenna one more time. Within just a few seconds, the channels return and continue working normally. If you enjoyed this project, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Your support motivates me to continue creating more recycling and DIY projects in the future.